Hello and welcome back to the Fit as Flock podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey Bush, and today I want to talk about a topic that continues to come up, so I thought we should address it here together, and that is your relationship with the scale. So I have done a previous episode about healing your relationship with the scale and why that's important and maybe how you might go about that. And I wanted to expand a little bit on that today because it continues to come up in terms of how the scale plays into this whole overall picture of weight loss and weight maintenance. So in the previous episode, we talked specifically about how to heal your relationship with the scale through what I call desensitization. And what I mean by that is getting on the scale on a very frequent basis, on a daily basis, or multiple times per week, to start to get used to seeing the fluctuations that are going to happen. Fluctuations are normal, they're going to happen. When people say that I am in maintenance mode or I'm maintaining my weight, that does not mean that they are maintaining a weight of, let's say that their goal weight was 145 pounds. It's not 145.0 every single day. It just doesn't work that way. There are many factors that influence the scale weight. I talked about them in detail. I'll mention them on a previous episode. I'll mention them again here. Things like your hormones, sleep, workouts, what you had to eat the night before, stress levels, all of those things are going to play a role in the weight that shows up on the scale. So getting on a consistent basis allows us to start to see that it is normal to see the scale go up and go back down and go back up and go back down. And what we really want to track over time are averages versus looking at one specific, expecting to see one specific number. Now, the reason that I think that this is an important part of this overall process is because at some point, hopefully you will either be working towards taking a dieting break where you'll no longer be in a calorie deficit and you won't be expecting to see the scale drop, or you will get to a point that you want to maintain your weight loss. And in order to do that, we have to keep a pulse on what our weight actually is. Now, I used to believe that you could do that by just looking in the mirror. I've tested this on myself, and let me be the first to tell you, it did not go well for me. In today's world, most of us are wearing clothes that are stretchy. So it's not like we're putting on rigid pants or tops that are going to be telling that all of a sudden they don't zip. I don't know about you, but all of my jeans, almost all of them, have some stretch to them. So even when I put them on, they're gonna stretch out if I've gained a little bit of weight. So that is why I think that while I don't believe that the scale tells the full picture, I don't think it is the only metric we should use in terms of tracking progress. I do think it is an important factor in the overall picture. And for many of us, we have a very complicated relationship with the scale. I am someone that spent a lot of time being very triggered emotionally by the number on the scale. And what I mean by that is I would get on the scale. If it was a number that I liked, that I was happy with, I would be in a good mood. If it was a number that I didn't like, that I wasn't happy with, I would be in a bad mood or mad or whatever. So starting to become desensitized and stop allowing the number to dictate emotions is a big piece of this. And you have to be in a place where you're ready to do that because you're going to go through, I liken it to, going through like caffeine withdrawals. For example, if you're trying to cut out caffeine or sugar withdrawals, you're going to go through a period of time that is unpleasant. You're going to have to ride those emotional waves until they're no longer so loud. The noise is no longer so loud. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that has worked for me, and I'm speaking for myself, is to ask myself before I get on the scale, how do I feel today? How do I feel in my skin? And letting that be the measure versus the number that it says. There are many, many times that I know in a given day that I'm just not feeling my best. I can tell that my body is bloated or I have some inflammation, and that is then reflected on the scale. And so you start to see and become more aware of different things that are impacting that. And so I say this as part of the belief that I think it's an important part of the process, but I don't think that's for everyone. And I want to be clear in that my recommendations are not a blanket statement. This does not apply to every single person in every single situation. I do believe that there are people that have a deeply rooted relationship with the scale and weight and body image. And that, I would say, falls out of not only this conversation, but also really my scope and my line of work specifically. So I just want to throw that out there in all of this, and that I'm speaking to in general when I'm talking about this. And I'm also sharing my own personal experience and journey. And for some of you listening to this, that's going to resonate. And for some of you, it's not going to resonate, and that is a-okay. So, starting there is really important. But then as you move into, so getting kind of over that, but then as you go into weight maintenance, it's really important. I tell my clients to establish a plus minus range or a safe zone. So I always say that my weight within plus or minus 3 pounds of a certain number. And I don't really think it's relevant to share that number because I really don't want you comparing yourself to me or me comparing myself to you, because it's really irrelevant. So it is what it is. So let's say that I'm just gonna make up a number. Let's say that number, like I said earlier, 145 pounds. If I were speaking of myself, I were to go 3 pounds over, then let's say I went to that 4th pound, that's when I know, okay, now I need to dial things back in. 3 pounds under, that's safe. I don't really struggle on that end so much typically. But I know that if I start to get at or above that height, that top part of my safe zone, I know that it's time to tighten things back up. So for me, for the last, year and a half, I've been in weight maintenance mode. So I've been living in this range of this 3 pound weight range. And so lately, I did bump 2 pounds out of that range, and it was staying up for a couple of weeks. And so what that told me was I needed to change something that I was doing. I knew that it was nutrition driven, and I was not tracking my food consistently. I don't do that when I'm in maintenance. I do use a food scale to portion out my food, primarily because I want to make sure that I'm fueling myself appropriately. I want to make sure that I'm getting adequate servings of protein. So that's something I personally continue to do. I also don't like just eyeballing it, because I can kind of in my head keep a running total of what I'm doing. But this is I am a great testament to things like random bites, tastes, licks, kitchen drive-bys. They can really add up. And I knew after I was like, okay, we got to figure this out, because what I don't want to have happen is that 2 pounds turns into 5 turns into 10 turns into 15. That becomes a whole lot of a bigger hill to climb versus, okay, things are staying elevated. I need to pull that back down. I'm going to be able to do that a lot quicker and easier if I address it now versus letting the problem get out of hand. The only way that I knew that the problem was getting out of hand is because I weigh my body on a scale on a consistent basis. Otherwise, I wouldn't notice 2 pounds on my body by looking in the mirror or by putting on my clothes. Is 2 pounds over my safe zone that big of a deal? No, not really. But it's really easy, like I said, for 2 to become 5 to become 10, etc. So after one day of going back to tracking, it was very obvious to me that all of my licks, bites, tastes, and everything were adding up really to be a lot more than I was even accounting for. In my mind, I tend to allow, 200 calories of a buffer a day, just knowing that I have this bad habit. I've shared about that very candidly before. This is a habit that I've struggled with for a long time, and it has really taken hold. So undoing it has been and is very unpleasant. But I've put myself in this situation, so it's incumbent upon me. If I want to make a change, I'm going to be the one that has to drive that bus. So even on the day that I went into tracking, it was funny because I did have a couple little bites and tastes and things like that I would normally do. And I logged those. I weighed them. I logged them. I accounted for them. And the funny thing was that because I was more aware and I was tracking, I did that less. But at the end of the day, once I looked at my macros, I looked at my calories for the day, and I thought about what I was doing on a daily basis prior to tracking, it was very obvious to me that those licks, bites, and tastes that I saw on that day, you could go ahead and 3x that for the previous several weeks, months, whatever you want to call it. So it shined a very big bright light on exactly where my problem was. And so I work with many people that they come to me, they have great success, they have all the tools, they leave, and whatever, they'll come back and say, I gained the weight back, it happened relatively quickly or whatever. And oftentimes it's because that they lost sight of how quickly things can catch up with them if they're not actively paying attention, actively aware of, usually it's nutrition, very rarely, sometimes it's exercise, usually it's a combination of both. But I wanted to share this because not only do I think it's important to share that, yes, I'm a normal person and I struggle too, but that there are ways around this. I have a lot of people that fear weight regain after loss. A lot of people, you'll hear people say that weight maintenance is more difficult than weight loss. And I think this is part of it. When you're in maintenance, you can kind of take that, it's a sigh of relief a little bit. Oh, I'm no longer in this deficit. I can loosen the reins a little bit. And yes, you absolutely can, but to what degree? And so it takes some practice. And I think that figuring out how to manage and incorporate using your scale weight is a big piece of that. Now, with that, I want to tell you that I think it's really important that before you do that, you ask yourself, are you ready to address your relationship with the scale? Are you in a place where emotionally you feel like you can do that? Because for some people, it's very difficult. I haven't shared this on the podcast, but I've shared this on Instagram before, on my social media, that when I was pregnant with my daughter, I stepped on the scale backwards every single time because I was very, very triggered by the scale weight. It's conditioning that I've had my entire life. I've always been, I'm short. I've always been short, and I've always been on like the higher end of a healthy BMI because I have an athletic, muscular body, and BMI does not take that into account. So for my entire life growing up, that was the narrative. Growing up, being born in the 80s, BMI was standard measurement. Now, my kids are young enough that that's not coming up yet in their pediatrician appointments, so I don't really know what emphasis is placed on that in today's world for children. I know that it is not as, at least with the physicians that I have, it's not something that it never comes up. But that was something that was very triggering to me. So when I was pregnant, I was not in a place where I could emotionally deal with it because there was nothing I could do about it. I knew it was going to cause me to be upset and not feel good. I already didn't feel good. I struggled through pregnancy. And so that was a decision that I made, that I just told my doctor, look, this is where I am with this emotionally, and like this is triggering for me. So I want you to not tell me what my weight is. You just let me know if it becomes a problem. If it becomes a health-related concern, a pregnancy-related, that this is becoming, risky or concerning, then we can discuss it. But beyond that, I really don't want to discuss my weight. Because I hadn't healed my relationship with the scale. And it's still something that I deal with on a daily basis. And that some days it's triggering and some days it's not, but I'm definitely less impacted by it now than I ever have been before. And I think that the biggest game changer for me was placing more value in the question that I ask before I get on the scale in my mind, which is, how do you feel today? And how do you feel in your skin, and allowing that to be way more important than that number, and letting that number be what tells me, kind of what's going on with my body, and then gives me that red alert of when to be concerned. So after the holidays, it gave me a red alert of, hey girl, you need to dial it back in. So I didn't have to worry and stress out about holiday weight gain. I went up a little bit. I got out of my safe zone, but I quickly reined it back in within a couple of weeks, back down to where I needed to be. Okay, we're good. Same thing in this scenario for the last couple of weeks, been up out of my safe zone, tightened things up. Now I'm back where I need to be. I'd like to be a little bit further into my safe zone. So I will continue to be in a very, very slight calorie deficit over the next couple of weeks to get there, versus, having created a mountain that I now need to climb up because it got out of hand. So if these are things that you struggle with, I hope maybe you took away a couple of tips. Maybe you can relate in some ways and see that in this struggle you are absolutely not alone. If there's anything I can do, recommendations, ideas, troubleshooting with this type of a topic, please reach out, let me know. You can reach me on Instagram at Lindsey Bush. I'd love to talk to you. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you on the next one. Bye.